Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, if you could smash the subscribe button and also if you could hit the like, it really does go a long way for channel growth. Anyway, Deontay Wilder has broken his silence following his defeat to Tyson Fury back in February. He said the following on the Premier Boxing Champions podcast: "In my eyes, I don't see Fury as a champion. He ain't the champion yet because we've still got one more fight left. When I took off my mask, the things that I was doing, I've been in this sport for a very long time, so people automatically know how I am. People that know boxing know that it wasn't Deontay Wilder on that night. I was a zombie on that night. I felt like a zombie. I'm still reflecting. I can't believe the things that happened. I'm figuring things out. No one should be surprised. I am who I am. Deontay the Bronze Bomber Wilder. Why wouldn't I want a third fight? He knows that wasn't me. I know that wasn't me. That wasn't the real Deontay Wilder. Something was wrong. There is more fuel on the fire. This is the final straw." Those are the words of Deontay Wilder to the PBC Boxing Podcast. Now, he also mentioned as well that he is looking at adding a few people to his camp, maybe 2 people. So where do we start with this one? First and foremost, in regards to adding a couple of new people to his camp, I don't think that's the worst idea, in all honesty. Obviously, that would depend on who he brings in, but if he brings in the right people, some fresh faces with fresh ideas, that can only be a good thing for Deontay Wilder. A couple of people who don't have any affinity to the Deontay Wilder camp, people who aren't yes men, people who will come in and actually try to implement change and suggest new tactics, new ideas. If he can bring in a few experienced people into his camp, I believe that can only be a good thing, to be honest. I really do. I think at this stage, Deontay Wilder needs all of the help he can get in regards to a third Fury fight, but they would need to be people that Deontay Wilder respects, because Deontay Wilder, he's got a massive ego. And while all fighters do have egos, there is a point to where it can be to your detriment. And I think that's what Deontay Wilder suffers with, to be honest. I think he's too stubborn and, in my opinion, his ego is too big to the point where he doesn't want to improve, or he's so delusional that he doesn't believe he needs to improve. He believes his power will just keep on bailing him out. And as a result, he's really not developed technically as a fighter for quite some time. Which is why I think a couple of experienced heads in camp would be a great idea. Guys who aren't yes men, guys who aren't scared to tell Deontay Wilder, listen, you're doing this completely wrong. This is what you should do, or this is what you should add. People who will actually be constructive. Deontay Wilder needs those people around him, not the likes of JD's, who in my opinion comes across as a yes man. After Wilder's lost to Fury, he was more concerned with keeping his job. These are the people Deontay Wilder is surrounded with. So yeah, Deontay Wilder certainly needs to make improvements in regards to the people who's in his camp. But enough of that. As for the rest of this interview that he did with the PBC podcast, basically Deontay Wilder kind of using more excuses, saying that he wasn't himself. He didn't really elaborate on what that was. But, he was basically making excuses. He's saying that wasn't him in the ring. But at the same time, he's saying he's reflecting on what went wrong and why things panned out the way they did. But that sort of mindset doesn't really, I don't believe that, in all honesty. With what Deontay Wilder's come out with after the fight, he's been more keen on making excuses. That's not reflecting. If you reflect on something in your past, maybe a mistake you've made, you're looking at that mistake and thinking of ways to improve, get better. But if you're making excuses for that mistake and finding reasons why that mistake happened, then you're not going to improve and try to rectify yourself so you don't make that mistake again. What Deontay Wilder has come out with, from what I can tell, is not reflection, it's merely excuse making. There is a difference. If he's truly reflecting on February the 22nd, then listen, he needs to be looking at that last fight and assessing the technical deficiencies Where was the jab? Why did I abandon the jab after round 2? Why was my balance so terrible? Why was my defense so awful? Maybe I need to find ways to set up my right hand to a point where it's not so telegraphed. Maybe I need to work on my feints, things like this. Work on my setups, work on my punch variety. Instead of being so reliant on the right hand, why not try to improve on the left hook or the right uppercut, other punches, more variety? There are plenty of things Deontay Wilder can reflect on what he did wrong in that second fight, and the first fight, and in numerous fights in his career. There's a lot of tape, there's a lot of source material in which Deontay Wilder can go back and look at. This is what Deontay Wilder should be doing, and this is how he should be reflecting. Reflecting is not about deflecting responsibility. Reflecting is about assessing the mistake you've made in the past and improving to a point in which that doesn't happen again. That's reflecting, But Deontay Wilder in this interview, again, dishing out more excuses. So, again, I'm not convinced that Deontay will improve. For me, Deontay Wilder just seems far too in his feelings. He seems far too egotistical to actually humble himself and say that, yeah, maybe I do need to improve. Maybe I've not really learned what I should have learned to this point. But, Deontay, he's 34 years old. He hasn't got time on his side, but he can still improve. Even minimal improvements are better than no improvements, If Deontay Wilder can be 2% a better fighter than he was second time around, that's something, Boxing really isn't complicated. I think people do try to overcomplicate boxing at times. I mean, the best example I can think of off the top of my head, someone like Marcus Maidana, for example, before he was with Robert Garcia, he really was just a come-forward fighter who threw overhands and hooks. That's what Marcus Maidana was. He applied good pressure, but he only really threw overhands and hooks. But when he went to Robert Garcia really didn't reinvent the wheel. He didn't try to come up with some elaborate scheme to make Marcus Maidana fight like Pernell Whitaker. No, all he did was basically add the jab to Marcus Maidana's game and a few feints, and as a result, Marcus Maidana was so much more effective as a fighter. These are basic improvements. So a little can go a long way in boxing. Boxing isn't complicated. So yeah, Deontay Wilder could improve as a fighter, but at the end of the day, that can only happen if Deontay Wilder humbles himself, accepts what happened on February 22nd, and instead of making excuses, actually assess what you did wrong and how you're going to improve those areas. That's how Deontay Wilder can improve. But has he got the mindset to do that? I personally don't think so. I've got to be honest. And also, let's just humour Deontay Wilder's excuses. Let's say he was injured in that rematch, which I don't believe he was, but let's say he was for a minute. Even if that was the case, you shouldn't use that as the sole reason for why you lost that rematch. If Deontay is using that as purely the reason why he lost, then he's not going to improve. In training camp, he's not going to work on new things. He's going to do the exact same thing again. Even if he was injured, he still needs to address the glaring technical flaws in his game. It's as simple as that. Anyway, share your thoughts below. What do you make of Deontay Wilder's interview on the PBC podcast? What do you make of his statements? Do you think the guy's going stark raving mad? Share your thoughts below. Peace.